After a year of incredible albums, EPs, some not so great albums, some definitely not good EPs, and flat out sanity breaking songs, we are here to close out the year on the highest of high notes. Talking about the best individual songs that EDM had to offer in 2024. And this list of all of them was by far the hardest one to make. So much so that after about a month of humming and hawing over which songs would land on the final list, the final cuts and the locking in of my top 10 came to fruition about 12 hours before this video is going to end up being released. That's just a testament to how incredible the tunes that came out this year were. But alas, there could be only 10. With a plethora of honorable mentions. But each of these tracks are subjectively my absolute favorite songs of the year, but also objectively quite fantastic as well. So, without any further ado, let's count down my top 10 EDM songs of 2024. Skrillex is not actually on this list, and that's because he had a pretty tame year, all things considered. The man cooked with a newly modernized bass house, hybrid trap, dubstep, hip-hop fusion of a record that was 2023's Quest for Fire. And having finally found that fire by the end of the year, it was a shame that Virtual Riot went and stole it. Virtual Riot's Stealing Fire was a fantastic album, and while it wasn't quite strong enough to have landed on my best albums of the year list, the title track was absolutely the brightest shining moment of that record for me. And while I joke about stealing Skrillex's fire that he went on a quest for, Stealing Fire does sonically pick up where Skrillex left off in 2023. A lush melding of bass house, dubstep, trap, and a smattering of one-shot fire samples, this track is genuinely my favorite Virtual Riot song of all time. And more than anything, I love how this song is structured, with very long lead-ins, ever-changing melodies, and an incredible amount of long, variety-filled drops. For just under 4 minutes, Virtual Riot acts as if this is a showcase track of sorts, one that declares his years of experience and prowess as a modern producer, a portfolio track, if you will. Even showcasing simple yet beautiful piano interludes that act as a perfect palate cleanser, enabling him to come back in even harder for the back half. Virtual Riot had a brilliant 2024, and for me, it was mainly off the heels of this track. I think holistically, it did a great job of alluding to and honoring the sounds that dominate the EDM space right now, while also feeling like it was inherently a Virtual Riot track.
I think computers are a way that people can be introduced to music.
Again, I need to reiterate how great of a year it was for EDM in terms of individual singles. Well, at least the more non-commercial leaning side of the space, the last list didn't go too well. But top to bottom, the amount of standout tracks really made this list hard to narrow down. More often than not, though, it was predominantly due to the bigger, more established artists of the scene that dominated most of the year and will fill a majority of the spots on this list. So when a relatively up-and-coming artist can tango with the big dogs, they deserve all the recognition.
Yeah.
Released on Tokyo Machine's new Champo label, Nokae and KORA teamed up for the straight-up greatest release in its history up to this point. DEITY was released in early January 2024, so it had a ton of time to sit with me, and it constantly took up space in my mind, and I love that it did. Nokae's dense, dirty-sounding bass electro house fusion paired so perfectly with the almost ethereal vocals of KORA, for a kind of 1-2 combo that knocks me out every time. My job, workplace, and hobbies give me a lot of opportunities to run the technical aspects of events and gatherings. And pretty much all throughout 2024, if I was at all in a setting where we needed to get the party started, DEITY was always a click away. I even specifically remember a moment late into the year where I was looking through my go-to kind of pump-up tracks playlist and scrolling and eventually getting all the way back up to the top where DEITY was. And I literally told the person next to me, I was like, this song just clears everything else. In a sea of fellow Champo releases that all have that more Tokyo Machine-leaning electro house style, DEITY goes above and beyond, solidifying itself as one of the all-time greats on a label already full of bangers. The company in which Nokae and KORA will find themselves surrounded by on this list is great company indeed, and they should be proud of their ability to dance with the big dogs. And when it comes to those big dogs of the industry, they can often take one of two paths. When you hit a certain point of success and fame, expectations for every release moving forward are continually heightened like never before. I mean, my list of the 10 worst EDM songs of the year is full of artists that became derivative versions of themselves or hopping on trends of the day, opting for bland production, and essentially throwing in the creative towel. So it's always refreshing when we get a commercial smash hit that is also just one of the best songs of the year. Justice and Tame Impala were a team-up that felt so natural. The disco-inspired French electro production of Justice and the iconic vocal inflection and neo-psychedelic presence of Kevin Parker's Tame Impala were truly a match made in heaven. I love the shimmering production elements of hi-hats and synth pops that sporadically join the fray at just the greatest of moments, only for Justice to pull the whole thing back to let Tame Impala do, well, Tame Impala things. Like seriously, they gave Kevin just an open book to riff off anything, and he took it and ran a marathon of quality songwriting. The two almost do this dance of sorts, a back and forth of handoffs only to join together for one grand finale, which I'll have you know doesn't even get that explosive. By actually keeping the track grounded with the already established tone, it turns what could have been a more underground leaning track into a commercial superstar. I'm not sure there is another track that has been so dominant in the EDM space, as well as been so loved by critics and commercial listeners alike. This is peak commercial EDM. I love following the storylines of artists' careers. I think it's important to know where they currently are, where they've come from, and where they are seemingly headed. I think it really helps put into perspective why a certain song or album sounds the way it does. So when a song can single-handedly usher a legend back into the limelight with a triumphant return, and simultaneously bring up and into the limelight another artist that deserves their time to shine, I'm all in. Zedd and Ellis team up for what I believe to be the strongest song on Zedd's comeback record, Talos. Already having had a few non-featured production credits on prior Zedd tracks, Ellis finally got his collaboration feature, and it's their best combined work yet. Both Zedd and Ellis had ventured into this funky house style of production over the last couple years, so this official team-up felt, quite frankly, inevitable. Ellis had already found a lot of critical reception from the EDM community for his pair of fantastic EPs and strong singles before this song's release of Tangerine Rays. Well, Zedd was trying to find his footing for this comeback record after a couple of singles in this style spread throughout the late 2010s. And the two just got together and produced gold. And it can't be understated how much impact Bia Miller has on this track. Within the holistic track list of this latest Zedd album, Bia goes back to back, providing vocal features on both this Tangerine Rays, the second track of the album, and furthermore the lead single and first track of the record, Out of Time. But I must say, her performance from one song to another feels like night and day. It's not to say her delivery on Out of Time isn't good, but you can just hear her passion and commanding presence so much more on Tangerine Rays. I don't think it's a stretch to say that this song is all of peak modern funky Zedd, a top 3 all-time Ellis track, and the best tune from Talos. Apparently, 2024 was just the year for comeback collaboration tracks. Justice and Tame Impala, Zed and Ellis, and now, let's just cut to the chase. Jamie XX and Robyn. Tackling his own pseudo-comeback album, already iconic UK bass and house producer Jamie XX teams up with dance pop legend Robyn for what is easily the strongest track off an elite album tracklist in its own right. This track was the third single to be released in the album cycle and was an immediate highlight for EDM fans, commercial-leaning listeners, and critics alike, and pretty much cemented that Jamie XX was cooking again. 1990s and early 2000s dance pop legend Robyn is also one of the most continually fantastic and high-quality producers, singers, songwriters, and musicians that, well, dance pop has ever seen. And it's quite frankly a shame that her music isn't talked about as much in the modern landscape anymore. She even had her own critically acclaimed 2018 sort of comeback record in her own right with Honey, that pretty much declared that she is inevitable.
It's just a matter of fact that we'll never get this back. Let's make it last all night.
What really separates this track from both a majority of this album's own tracklist and other commercial-leaning funky house tunes is the heavy usage of those sexy horns. Paired primarily in tandem with Robyn's vocals and bouncing off one another in cadence and flow, it's a powerful 1-2 combo of radiant sound design.
You're giving me life. Let's make it last. You're giving me life.
Jamie XX and Robyn both represent this certain area of electronic dance music that isn't entirely commercial leaning, but also isn't anywhere near the bassier side of things. In this seemingly awkward middle ground, but one that fosters complete control over style, tone, and creativity that knows no bounds. This song, it's just giving me life. When I make these lists, there's often a single entrant that I'm most excited for. It's often not number one, and it's because it's often a wild song, either a pick out of left field from an artist I don't think a majority of you know, or because it just goes unjustifiably hard. Well, this song is all of that combined into one.
Drop the bass.
Violet Pony is an artist I discovered for the first time this year off their record Girls Who Are Wizards. And they're just one of those more underground leading artists that just kind of pump out song after song after song all year round, just kind of bouncing around a variety of genres and tones. A Swiss army knife of musical talent and production. So much so that even this 4.5-minute track has like 7 different tonal switch ups and changes, and it's constantly subverting my expectations. I'm going to play a tiny snippet from a bunch of random moments from this song to really get across how wild this song is and how much variety there is in just this short amount of time.
Fucking Christmas morning.
See, I told you, this thing is absolutely bananas, and I love it for that. But at the core of this song in particular is an ode to the king himself, Skrillex. Essentially sampling all of his greatest hits and moments from the early stages of his career, Violet Pony is practically remixing an entire man's career, and it sounds amazing. More than anything though, this song isn't some lazy take on old school dubstep that uses those iconic samples merely to grab your attention. This song is an ode to an era of EDM that acts as both a highlight of some of the greatest hits and turns it into something for a modern 2024 audience. Violet Pony just transported me back to a time where a younger Dakota would listen to Skrillex on my iPod Nano and just be in awe with all these new dubstep sounds that I'd never heard of before. And ultimately, it was the reliving of those memories and honoring of the past that landed the song a spot on this list. In In the same way that I discovered the wonderful world of dubstep through the lens of Skrillex when I was a youth, there was another era of EDM for me that is near and dear to my heart. In the mid-2010s, I discovered what are now some of my favorite labels like Monster Cat and NCS. They had this inherently unique sound that was somehow nowhere near the likes of Skrillex and Daft Punk, yet intimately EDM still. I do believe there were a couple years in there that I now consider the golden era for most of the EDM space that I guess I was listening to, but specifically those types of labels. So boy, was I excited to hear a 2024 track that transported me right back there. Skybreak and Keepsake team up for what is very evidently a song inspired by the mid-2010s future-based tracks of Monster Cat and NCS alike. I mean, Keepsake was literally there for it and was a voice in both his production and, well, his voice vocally, feeding many of the tracks on that treadmill that was the golden era of EDM. Comet is a track that leans a little bit into all of dubstep, future bass, and drum step, even with hints of modern color bass for a song that is both deeply nostalgic and a modern banger. A sentiment that is also further expressed through the artist that made this very track, as Skybreak represents this modern style of production, while Keepsake's voice alone gives me flashbacks to 2016. I don't say this lightly, and I've listened to a lot of music from this label, but I truly believe that this is the greatest song ever released in the 14-year history of NCS. Again, it both speaks to the sounds that put the label on the map for many fans like myself, while also being a song that doesn't feel outdated by any means. Skybreak and Keepsake are personal favorite artists of mine, and everything about this release spoke to who I am as an EDM fan, the sounds I grew up on, and quite frankly, the reason this channel, Bowtied Media, even exists. So, thanks, Comet. The late 2000s and early 2010s was an interesting era of music for both pop as a whole and EDM, because for the first time really ever, the two had become entangled like never before. It seemed like most pop hits had a newfound EDM edge to them. And while there was a slew of truly great songs, records, and artists that played off that intermingling, there really wasn't anyone or anything that truly dominated both the EDM and pop charts. Guess we just had to wait until 2024 for it to happen all at once. It's no surprise that Charli XCX was going to land on this list. And for me, it was truly a matter of what song I wanted it to be. And in the end, I really do think it was her second version of Guess featuring Billie Eilish that most definitively defined this year. While obviously not within the EDM space, Billie Eilish had herself a fantastic year in her own right with her now third critically acclaimed album back to back to back with 2024's Hit Me Hard and Soft. This record of hers intimately explores her sexuality and, well, gayness. So it was an absolutely brilliant move on Charli's part to bring Billie on for a hard-hitting electro clash fidget house track that wants you to guess the color of her underwear.
Wanna guess the color of my underwear? You wanna know what I got going on down there?
As a bonus remix track that didn't originally land on Brat, Guess featuring Billie Eilish is just the party girl anthem of 2024 straight up. I know there are some of you watching this right now and saying, this isn't EDM, this is pop. Charli XCX and Billie Eilish are pop stars, this isn't EDM. And to that I would simply say, you don't really know how to use your brain. Because this is an electro house banger of hilarious songwriting, meta commentary, and high production value.
I didn't get all up in it, kiss it right again, I fit it. Charli likes boys, but she knows I'd hit it.
And while Billie Eilish herself doesn't stick around for long, providing a quick little pop rap verse, the line, Charli likes boys, but she knows I'd hit it, is the single greatest moment in music industry this year, as it almost perfectly represents the year that both Charli and Billie had in their own respective spaces. When it comes to my personal musical preferences, I am a complete sucker for grand, explosive, and eventually crashing longer tracks that seemingly build and build and build and build for an often singularly climactic moment. At its core, that's what music is to me, and it's a formula that is just a more fleshed out notion of it. And I don't think there is a better song in all of EDM this year that both embodies this grand narrative while also leaning more into an experimental side that I love.
I think about it since
After his debut 2022 record with It's Hard to See Color When You're So Impossibly Far Away, which is a very long album title by the way, I have been in love with his bright, colorful, experimental, left field, often wonky, and glitch pop sound design style and tone. So I was extremely excited for this sophomore record that dropped just days before the year end in light years. And while I really did enjoy the album, it was holistically a little on the messier side. That being said, the back half of this record is some of Jaron's best production straight up. And at the heart of all of that is ICARUS.
I'm never giving up, no.
ICARUS perfectly embodies that grand, explosive sound that I get quite easily suckered into. Furthermore, Jaron is constantly dancing around a batch of bright synths, harsh distortion, and intentionally rough around the edges mixing. Narratively, ICARUS follows Jaron through his own journey of getting to the top of the industry ladder and the declaration that I'm on my way up, I'm never giving up, and you're about to see the vision. A bold statement of confidence in his own production and foresight into what the future will hold for the Jaron project. But in an intentionally ironic turn, the song is called ICARUS, a clear nod to the character of Greek mythology that got tripped up on his own ego and flew too close to the sun. A notion that is further conveyed through those brutal synth crawls and intense sound design. And then Jaron closes out the track with a brilliant final stanza stating that, and if you see me falling, I'll just see you looking up. I'm never giving up, no, I'm just waking up. Declaring definitively that he's already made it and there's nothing you can do to stop him. It's definitely arrogant and bold, and I love it. Just before we get into my number one pick for EDM Song of the Year, I want to quickly highlight a ton of honorable mentions. This list was truly difficult to whittle down to just these 10, and I think these other tracks deserve some love too. And just like I did with my top albums list, I'm going to be including some tracks that don't fall into the EDM category and would not ever land on a list like this, but songs that were personal favorites of mine from other genres this year.
I did my job. What's happening, bitch? We live. Probably thought you never see the day of Ultra 85. It's been a minute.
It's my fault. I'm coming up to the party.
It's time for our final entrant, my number one pick for Best EDM Song of the Year that will also be ushering us into the conclusion of these 2024 in Review series of videos. And quite frankly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Robinson's Cheerleader was never not going to be the number one pick for this list. Since day one of its release, I had practically penciled it in right here, and quite frankly, nothing came even close to it. other than maybe some of his own songs off of Smile. But regardless, Cheerleader is peak Porter Robinson that does all of honoring the cult-like following that is his fandom, speaks from his perspective on his relationship with his fans, sounds like a true culmination of all of his areas of sound design, and ushered us into a new one. At its core, Cheerleader is a meta-commentary on parasocial relationships. The idea that while you may know a lot about Porter's life, habits, and wants and desires, he knows nothing about yours. So while you may feel like you two are best friends, it's in reality a one-sided relationship, a parasocial relationship. What Porter does here is just quite genius. Rather than just addressing one half of the parasocial side of things where the girls are addicted, obsessed like I know I can fix him, Porter flips things on its head and declares back to the fans that I thought she needed me, but I need her. While not relationally, Porter is nothing without his fandom of listeners that actively engage with all that he does and produces. It's a relationship that really is a two-way street, just not a linear one.
Do I wish her the best, or do I actually miss her?
Narratively aside though, Cheerleader is pure electropop bliss. Sonically, the song acts as both an appreciation for all of his former eras, as well as confidently declaring this new indie bit pop era for Porter. Big guitar riffs, sustained synth runs, constant drum work, the bringing down to more somber moments, and then a big grand finale. This song has defined an era for Porter Robinson while simultaneously taking over the EDM sphere in the process. 2024 might have had a brat summer, but the year was Porter Robinson's. And with that, we have reached our final conclusion. But thanks for being here and joining me for the ride. What did you think of this list? Did Cheerleader deserve the #1 spot? What did you think of all of these, my 2024 in review videos? Was I super off on anything, or did I get it all right? I'd love to know in that comment section below. But other than that, I'm Dakota from Bowtied Media, officially signing off and saying goodbye to 2024. But regardless, I'll see you in another video.